Hi, this is Swan with Swan Amity Studios, and today we're looking at making our apple with Inktense. Now, of course, this is from a little applique drawing, and if you were making it with applique, these are easy to cut out pieces and not difficult to work with. But we're going to paint them today, and we're going to paint them with a little bit of Derwent's Inktense, both the pencils and the blocks. And I like having both of them because the blocks are really very easily blended into the space, and you can see that I've treated them a little bit like a pastel here and blended them ahead of time. So very much like working with chalk on a sidewalk or on a canvas surface, they're easy to just kind of blend as you draw with them. We've outlined our apple to start with, we've outlined our leaf and the stem, and we put a little detail in on the top. We've also shaded in some sections here, a lighter section, and some darker areas. And we've just kind of done that by following along with an image of an apple. Now you can find that online, or you can look at your very own apple and decide how yours are going to work out. I've mixed up some medium here, and this is a textile medium mixed with a little bit of water. You can see that I don't actually need very much. I've got kind of a very small amount in the bottom of my jelly jar. A little bit goes a long way with this type of a process. Now, because we're working dry, we're also working on our Prepared for Dye batik, which I like because it's much more closely woven and allows all of your pencils, once we start using them, to move very smoothly on the surface. And we're going to start kind of in the middle of our space and work our way outward as we go. So here we're just adding our medium, and you'll notice I'm using my brush a little bit more like a scrubby than I am like a brush per se. What I really want to be doing is blending my colors. So I'm looking to use things that are less like strokes, we might think of, and more like kind of a rounded blending motion. The other benefit of that is that it's going to keep me from having any kind of clear little brush-like spaces or images in my final piece, so that as I'm blending color, I'm not really producing any stroke lines. However, keep in mind, this is a watercolor product. It's not something that's designed to look like it was printed. It's designed to look like it was painted. So you won't have things that look like they don't have any kind of little distinct watermarks. You're working with water. You will have some watermarks. There's where we change color a little bit. We get a little bit lighter. And so we know that that's going to shift things a little bit. Notice that that means that in some cases where I know that I'm shifting color, I might actually use a slightly different motion with my brush to kind of accent that and not bring that dark into that space. And we're just going to keep going here just a little bit. And this is the point in time where you would start thinking about your pencils. So as you come up to some of the detail portions, your pencils are going to come into play. But until we get to those zones, we're not worried about the pencils just yet. We've really only used blocks so far. You can see how my lighter section is still looking nice there. And of course, we do have some little color change and some spots that we can go back and we can blend more in. We can also add more color on top of that if we want to eliminate any of those lines. But remember, we said it's watercolor. And personally, I kind of like that little bit of a touch that shows us that it's art, that it's not printed. I like those little imperfections. Now, as we come up to the edge, we want to stop just kind of adding our medium indiscriminately. And as we come up to the edge, we want to add medium away from the edge, and we want to kind of push it out. Notice I changed my brush motion there from those roundy, scrubby motions to something that is a little bit back and forth. That's just so I can control the movement of the medium up to the edge and not push medium out into my background away from my focal. See how that stayed controlled? It stayed right in there. That's what we were aiming for. Now, that's easier to accomplish if we never bring our medium right up close to the edge. We want to try to avoid that if we can. And when you see that the medium starts to kind of push itself outwards towards the edge, it's blooming towards the edge, that's when you stop adding medium and just push what you have. See how that's moving just a little bit? We just push what we have out to the edge so that it's not scary that it might run out into our background space. Now with this one, it's going to be a little applique. I'm going to add this onto a project. So if I did run over the edge, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm going to turn that edge over and we're never going to see it again, and that's fine. But maybe you have other plans for your piece. Maybe it's going in the center of a block. Maybe you're doing something a little different with your project. Maybe you want to frame it. And in those cases, you're going to want to watch for those edges and know how to control them. So we're just making sure we don't bring medium all the way out to those edges. Now I traced my piece on, I traced my apple on with my washout pen. So as I add medium, those little blue washout lines are coming out because they're getting wet. And whatever doesn't come out in the painting process, we know that's going to go away when we wash our piece before we add it to our projects or before we frame it. Now notice I'm into the detail work here just a little bit around this edge. And I'm not going to use my pencil just right away. I'm going to let that sit for just a second because I want my pencil to go on and kind of stay where it belongs. So I want that to just sit for just a moment, not be too wet when I bring a pencil to it. And I'm going to go back and finish my red before I head into the green and the stem up here so that I'm not dragging that into my red apple. Now this project I really like. This is for the New York City panel blog hop, where we're going to be working with the Empire State Building, and I just love the Empire State Building paired with the concept of the Big Apple. So of course I had to make a beautiful big red juicy apple. That just makes me happy. And as you know, if you watch my other videos, we stitch happy around here. If it doesn't make us smile, then we don't like to do it. So here we go. Here's the edge of our apple coming out on the other side. A little bit of darkness over here, and then we're going to head into another little light space too. And I'm totally okay with how our blending is going here. I'm going to shift a couple of things with a little block here as we finish up, but in the meantime, we are doing good. And our edges are staying pretty neat here. There's our next little light space. And I'm going to add some medium a little faster in this zone. Now, if you're doing the New York City panel blog hop, make sure that you're checking out all the different bloggers and what they have to offer you. And make sure you download your apple so that you can check out how to make your own Empire State Building table runner. Whether you applique your apple, fusing it perhaps and stitching it out on your machine, or if you're a hand applique lover, you can totally do that too. I really am. I really love to hand applique, which is what I'm going to do with this guy when he's done. There's that edge again, big sweeping motions, dragging our medium out to the edge. We don't want to put it on the edge. We just want to kind of push it out there. But in this case, I'm going to applique after I've painted instead of cutting it out from colored fabric. We just started with our plain white batik. And this one is a prepared for dye, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be any white batik that you have available. I really like the white batik from Island Batik. It's just a lovely thickness and it's great for painting on. There's our brighter red out there on the edge. Ooh, I love that one. Okay, we're just kind of finishing up our red base down here. And let's get some pencils in here before I finish up the rest of our apple off camera. And we're just going to start taking a look at what happens with pencils. So up here where we did our little detail at the top of the apple earlier is starting to get to a point where it's not quite soaking wet. And that's really what we're looking for to be able to use the pencils effectively. Not to have the piece be so wet that the pencils begin to kind of push their color all over the place, but wet enough that the pencils glide comfortably on the surface of the piece. So what we're going to do is get some of our pencils out. Here I'm going to work with two of my darker ones, and I want to just go ahead and bring in that edge again that was there earlier. And this one's going to pull just a little bit more darkness out of that edge there and under the leaf. Good, it's just what I wanted. And we're just going to come up and do a little bit of edging up here at the top of the apple and a little bit at the top on this side. Now with this darker pencil, I'm just wanting to get the areas of the apple that should be a little bit darker. And I'll bring in a little bit more on the bottom of the apple too. And then on the top of the apple, I'm going to go ahead and on those edges where I have just a little bit more light in the piece, we're going to go ahead and make those a lighter, brighter red and let that play out pretty nicely on our finished applique. So we're going to complete our apple the same fashion, bringing in the pencils as kind of our little detail elements, and we don't need them quite as much as we need all of our beautiful blocks, and we need our blending motion with our brush. But the pencils are still really important. They do all of the detail work, and they do beautiful lettering too. I really like that aspect of them as well. So thinking about how to use your pencils, they are really your outliners, your detail element, and they allow you to do some beautiful lettering or signing your piece as well. I like to keep my pencils nice and sharp, and so I wait for them to dry after I've done a piece, and then I go ahead and sharpen them afterwards. And if you ever do have a little edge get away from you and that is important to you, go ahead and bring your pencil in there right away. Just kind of reestablish the line. Nobody needs to know that you went just a little bit outside. It's art. So if yours is just a little bit different from your neighbor's, that's okay. It's allowed. And last little bit of my Inktense here that wasn't quite wet. That's perfect. Now the medium helps the color move more slowly, which is what we want, so we can control it. And it also helps it stay more color fixed over time, so that it will survive being in some sunlight zones and washing. And that color fixative, that's great. That's going to allow you a lot of latitude. So I'm going to finish up my apple up here with my leaf and stem the same way as we just did our apple here, blending my color in, roundy motions, making sure that I control my edges with those back and forth motions, pushing my medium all the way out to the edge rather than applying it to the edge. Detail work is done with my pencils. And I hope that you are enjoying playing with your own Inktense or with the New York City panel blog hop. Have fun and stitch happy, friends.